So, thank you so much for being here.
Yes,
for
thanks
having this
me.
conversation with me and discussing one of my favorite topics, Madam C.J. Walker.
Yes.
Just a brilliant human, and the fact that you were able to embody her in a poem that I've read multiple times. It's magical, and I'm grateful to share this space with you. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Many people don't know why this building was built or how significant it is to the Black community. Madam bought this land that the building occupies and passed away 8 years before construction was complete. Her initial vision for this space was for her manufacturing headquarters, but after being upcharged and denied entry into the now defunct ISIS Theater on Monument Circle, she endeavored to build a space for her people, by her people, where we could enjoy the arts and elevate our own culture, which then brings me to the title of your poem, Madam's Grounds. I'd love to know more about your title choice and the importance of spaces designed explicitly for and by Black people.
Okay, that's a great question. So to start, I have a love relationship with titles. And I always have since before I was an actual writer. I used to go to the video store with my mom and my stepdad, and I'm an only child, so they would be like, you can go pick you out a movie. And I would always pick out a movie with a one-word title, because I always felt like, even as a kid, I felt like if the title was just one word, this has to be a great movie. Because you're not really giving me much. And I remember very specifically a movie called Malice with, I think, Alec Baldwin and Nicole Kidman and a couple other people. It's a really good movie. I remember seeing that movie on the shelf and had no idea what malice meant. Like, I didn't know the word. I was 10, 11 years old. And I was like, this movie. And I could still watch that movie to this day because it's a good movie.
Yeah, it is.
So I've always had this thing about titles as a writer, excuse me, and throughout my poetry, just trying to find a title that isn't a dead giveaway to whatever I'm talking about, that kind of leaves a bit of mystery where I can, but also gives that same, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but that same feeling that was invoked in me as a child, growing up and picking, I did books that way too, growing up and picking movies and books based off of one-word titles. I've always wanted to have my titles bring that same feeling to other people. And it's not that I title stuff one word, I do sometimes, but it's just that I want my titles to bring that same feeling, because for me, it made me want to see what this is. So if I can do that with my title, it's going to make you want to hear it, want to know what it is, want to read it. When I came up with this title, it was actually at the end, towards the end of completing the poem. A lot of times I'll title something first because I'll just have this phenomenal title that's like, oh my God, I have to do something with this. But like, this wasn't that situation because I already had a subject. So a lot of times I'll have a title, no subject, and I'll just see where that can go. But this already had a subject, so I knew the title wasn't going to come until the end, until after I had written it and figured out what's the running theme here, what's the spinning totem in this piece. And when from the get-go, I was big on using grounds, because I was reading through a lot of her quotes, and I watched interview with her great-great-granddaughter, and she was talking about her meeting with Booker T. Washington, and just trying to get the opportunity to speak, and him not letting her speak, and then her finally at the end standing up and saying, hey, listen, I did all this stuff on my own grounds. And that stood out to me as that I have to, whatever this poem comes out to be, it has to utilize grounds.
Yeah.
Because that is something that she was very adamant to speak, to say, I did this on my own grounds.
Yeah.
So once I got to the end of it, I was like, do I title it with grounds? Because that's kind of toggling that space for me of being too easy to understand what this is. But it just was, there was no other title.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, these grounds belong to the madam, and that cannot be the title.
Yeah.
Because that is their giveaway.
Yeah.
So how do I take that line that is kind of repeated throughout the poem in different places and create a title from that? And it's like, oh, just talk about the ownership, Madam's grounds, and boom. So that's how I got to that.
Oh, I love it. And I think what you were wanting to evoke, that air of mystery, but also the compulsive nature to see what the heck is in this book, or what's in this poem, what's in this text. I think you did that perfectly. Madam's Grounds is a beautiful title.
Thank you.
And I'm real interested in talking about Madam's life. We know that she lived a very luxurious yet tragic life, and if it wasn't her black skin that held her back, then it was her womanhood. And if it wasn't her womanhood, then it was her lack of traditional education. So I'm real interested to know the nature of your research for this particular poem, what you saw, what you read, what you heard, something that surprised you specifically in your research.
Yeah, so, okay. The research was very interesting because it started off challenging. I'm a gig worker. So I do Instacart and Amazon Flex almost nonstop, because outside of the arts, that's where I get the bulk of my income from. So I spend a lot of time in my car, and I spend a lot of time inside the grocery store. But I have earphones on all the time. So originally, I was looking for stuff that I could listen to, because my downtime to really dive in the way I wanted to was very limited, and inside those limitations were other things, pressing things that I needed to get done. You got to workshop here, you got to go here, you got to do this, you got to make sure all these things are together. So
I was artist life.
The artist life, like you think, okay, you got to research Madam C.J. Walker, and that should be simple enough. And it's like, yeah, if absolutely nothing else was going on in my life, that would just be great, actually. So I kept looking for something to listen to. I struggled to find anything to listen to. Now, in hindsight, what should have happened was I should have got my library card, got the book, and listen to the book. I did not make it to that point until the week of writing the poem. And I don't know why it never dawned on me. I think just because I was just thinking, look for something that you could listen to. And when I think books, I never think of audio. I never do. Because if I'm I know, I've not gotten there yet. And I want to.
I believe in you, JY. I believe in you.
But I'm still in the let me put my fingers on the book and turn the pages kind of thing. So it just didn't even cross my mind to get into the book. But so I started at YouTube, just looking for the videos that were not created by somebody for a school project.
Because there are many.
Many of those, most, to be quite honest. And I found 2 videos. I found the one with her great-great-granddaughter. It's like a 45-minute interview with For Harriet. And then I found like an hour-long docu-video, sort of, that seemed PBS-ish. So I played both of those. And when I tell you I've listened to both of those videos probably 25, 30 times a piece, just like literally trying to get her great-great-granddaughter's voice and specifics in my mind, and then listening to the other video, like it talked, the first half was about Madam Walker, the second half was about her daughter. I've never been very familiar with her daughter and anything that her daughter did, so this created another mind-blowing thing that I had to like scale myself back from. Like,
I know you were like ready to write another poem about Aaliyah Walker.
Not worrying about her daughter, okay? Please stay focused. But I was like, what? She rubbernecked with whom? But so I had those things, and then I made my way to her website, and I just went through her website, which then I started clicking on different stuff that would take me to other places. I read through Indianapolis Star papers and just all kinds of things, anything that I could find, because what I was looking to do with the poem was, I know I'm going to bring you information that you've heard before or that you're familiar with, but I want to bring you a piece of the woman herself. We know Madam Walker for her hair care products, and we know the Madam Walker Theater, but getting into that Sarah Breedlove of Madam Walker is what I was looking for.
Because her humanity is important.
Yes, the humanity. I actually had a conversation at a Major Taylor event and was asking people, do you know where I can get like the not surface information about Madam Walker? Like, where can I just, and it's not that I'm going to put that in a poem. I just want to, as if I'm sitting there interviewing her, listening to her talk, I just want to pull from that energy and then go write. So to be honest, because I didn't start with the book, I struggled to get that humanity piece. So I had to kind of read between the lines of all the information I was listening to and reading and finding it myself. So like the line in the poem about close your purse and keep it clean, let others wonder if it holds gold. That is something that I found in Indianapolis Star, and it was something that she had said before. And when she was speaking about the appearance of us as Black people and how you want to show up, you want to look good, you want to smell good, and don't worry about X, Y, Z. Just bring yourself, your full self, and just look like you're coming to handle business, coming to be who you are. And that line stood out about the purse, because when I read it, I was like, that's kind of part of the humanity that I'm looking for. And so that led me to Madam Walker quotes. So then I just fell into a rabbit hole of stuff that she had literally said, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't have time to listen to the book to the point to get the information that I want. I can listen to it, but I'm only going to get so far with the deadline that I have. So what better way to get it than to just find it through what she has said about herself, about her life, about our society, our situation, Black women, everything. And so I took a combination of all of that and tried to find a space that spoke about her as we know her, but also in a way that makes her a human being, that makes her this Black woman who showed up unapologetically, as we say, in the most serene sense. So not deep diving into tragedy and trauma, because this is a poem and there's no time for that. And saying the stuff that we already know, but not leaning on the stuff, not leaning on hair care, which is why there's the line in there about she wanted to grow more than just follicles. She wanted us to grow flowers out of more than just our hair follicles. It's like, yes, she grew hair, okay? Hands down.
We know that.
And we know that. We've seen it. We still have her product out here today.
But who is she as a woman?
Who is she as a woman? Who is Sarah? Who is the person who adopted the moniker Madam C.J. Walker? Who is the person behind the scenes who's saying, no, I'm gonna build a factory on my own grounds.
Gonna make it happen.
I'm about to make this happen.
See,
and we need to know that person. If we're gonna put if this is gonna be part of a mural, then we need to have part of the woman and not just the historical reference. disrespect to it, because we need the history is necessary, but not just that part, because we get in this society, we start to lean heavily on the accomplishments of a person, and then we forget that is a person.
That's right.
Has feelings, thoughts, everything. And so just trying to bring all that out and search for all that.
Oh my goodness. I did not want that answer to stop. It's interesting that you described your research process in this particular way, because in reading that poem over and over and over, and then even hearing you recite it earlier today, I feel as if I know Madam the human. And I've been working at the Madam Walker Legacy Center since 2014.
Yeah.
Madam Walker, for all intents and purposes, is a household name. We know her story.
Yeah.
We know she was the first Avon lady or Mary Kay lady. She coined that standard operations of procedures and how she moved throughout the world and how she handled her business. But who was she behind closed doors?
Yes.
Who was she when there were no cameras, or in her time, speeches to give, people to be in front of? And I feel as if through that poem and the way you structured your lines and the way it's formatted, I think it captures Madam's essence, which is really hard to do for a woman that is larger than life. Like Madam C.J. Walker was the woman, period. And I really, really, really am just excited to see this poem be brought to life and to exist. A snippet of it exists on this sign that chronicles Madam's life from beginning to end. I can't think of a better poet to do that, and I think you understood the assignment.
Thank you. That means so much. This was so, I told you earlier, this was probably one of the most nervous writing sessions, and I say sessions because it wasn't just the straight through write. But every time I opened up my laptop and pulled the document up, I just instantly felt overwhelmed, because I want to get it right. And I've been commissioned to write a few poems about other people, Major Taylor, Kathleen Grant. I did a tribute poem for the names that they added at the CBLC. So I'm not a stranger to writing about people in a historical way. But I don't do Pilates, so I was very unfamiliar with Kathleen Grant.
Oh!
With the library, I was writing about a group of people. I think it was 9 or 10 names added. So it's a mixture of women and men. And then Major Taylor was a man. So this was the first time that I'm writing about a black woman of this stature. Mind you, Madam C.J. Walker is who I did my first school project on that I can remember.
Oh, my heart. Oh.
Like elementary school.
Yes.
I put that in there when I was like, I want to do it because I wrote about her when I was like in the 3rd grade.
Yes.
But so all of these things are in my, and even that being something I did in elementary school, in my head, that translates to, if you wrote about it in elementary school, then I know you know what you're talking about.
Ain't that
you better get it right. So there was just all this pressure that nobody put on me but myself. I'm
we
just
all do
under
it,
this
don't
umbrella of I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a start. I don't have an end. I just grounds.
Grounds.
Just grounds.
On her own grounds, Madam's grounds.
So that means a lot. I mean, when I got to the end of it, I just was like, I hope this does not sound generic and basic, and not that there's anything wrong with basic, but just I'm a black woman and she's a black woman, and this theater, and this is Indianapolis. You want to understand that assignment.
That's
you don't want to come back and the paper has red marks. The goal is I send this to the people that I'm supposed to send this to, and they say, excellent.
Yes. I'm really, really glad that you said that. Earlier, you had mentioned your writing process, and automatically, you know, I'm very methodical. So I've got this list of questions, and I had to skip to my last question because we've known each other for a while. 2010, I believe, is when I first met you.
Yeah.
And I'm painting the picture perfectly in my head. It was right at the intersection of 17th and College at the Outspoken open mic when it had a life there. And you walk in this all white outfit. I mean, the most consistent thing I can say about you among all of the brilliant things is when you show up, you show out, and you got an outfit on and it's gonna look amazing.
Thank you.
So little 19-year-old Devon, starstruck, who was this goddess entering into this space, and you entered into the space with this poem. I couldn't tell you what you said, I couldn't tell you what the content was, but I was so captivated by your voice, your delivery, and what you said just struck such a deep chord with me. And since then, having rubbed shoulders with you on many stages and being able to read your work from 2010 until now, I've always been really curious about your writing process.
Yeah.
What does a writing session look like for JY?
Oh, God. It could look so many different ways. So when it's just me, I'm just writing, typically it is one session. I will pick the pen up and write, and then I'll make my way back to it. Sometimes the same day, sometimes days or weeks later, and just kind of play with it. If it's something that I feel like, let's continue. Sometimes I will write something that I think is really, really dope, and I'll never go back to it ever again. I won't edit, I won't read it, and years down the line, I'll be looking randomly like, what did I write in the last 10 years? And like, oh, that was good. You never did nothing with that. It's unfortunate. And then there is the commission part, which is a lot different, because when I just sit down and write, sometimes I'll pretend like I'm here and this room is full of people, and this poem that I am about to write already exists. So I have several poems that I've done that way. I have a poem called Parked Cars. I have a poem called I Want to Beatbox on Blocks Where Rocks Are Sold.
Where rocks get sold, yes. I could probably recite that one by memory, by the way.
So like both of those poems, and I feel like Brownstone in Brooklyn started like this too, but specifically Parked Cars and I Want to Beatbox on Blocks Where Rocks Get Sold. I was standing in my dining room and this line just came, like I was, I don't know how to describe it. There's this sudden feeling of poeticness when you're not doing anything, and
When
you're just
the
like, I feel like I could write a
muse
poem right now.
Yes.
Why can't I? And then what happens is I put myself in this situation, like there are thousands of people listening to me and I'm featuring, and I just start talking, spitting. And so in the case of that poem, it was like, I want to beatbox on blocks where rocks get sold.
You're like, let's write this down.
Let's go to the pen.
That's the one.
Because I'm literally never by the pen when I do this.
Oh, story of my life.
So yeah, I'll do it that way, and then magically end up with something that people actually like. Like those two poems, people have always liked them, and I'd be like, I just started that pretending like it was a real line that already existed in a poem that I was performing for an audience that was just my two dogs in my empty living room. So it's that, and then there is the commission way where, honestly, I work well under pressure.
Yes.
I do. I hold myself back sometimes. Commission pieces, I don't sit down to write. I wait for them to make their way to me. A lot of times it is in the final hours. But it gets done. But I don't sit down to write them because I feel like, almost like we were talking about the questions. It's the same concept. Like if you give me the questions you're gonna ask me, that's cool. And I can read over them. And when I sit down and you start asking me the questions, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this answer's already been prepared and it goes this way.
Yeah.
Now I might deviate from that, you know, just in general conversation, but the basis I already have covered before I even arrive to the building.
Yeah.
So like, I feel that same way about commission pieces. I'm not gonna sit down and just start writing them as if I am the know-all of this human being already. I need to just do whatever my due diligence is, whether that's research or talking to people or whatever. But even after I do that, I need to just sit back and live life until the poem comes knocking at the door and says, I have arrived. Wow. Now it's your turn to figure out what my arrival looks and sounds like. So that is, those aren't the only two. I have probably 3, 4 other different ways that I write. I write in free writes and turn them into real poems.
Yes.
And I piece poems together, stuff that I didn't use. I pull that together when I just want to write something, just feeling like something needs to be written. But those are the top 2, is I either to start off with a line like I know what I'm talking about already, which is how most of everything that I've written in the last year has been, or I just sit and I wait for it to come. And in a sense, it's the same as when I'm writing for me, because even though I sit down in this free write, so to speak, and just write it all out, it came to me.
Yeah.
I rarely sit down and be like, I'm about to write a poem. What is it? Something already is existing in there. Something already said I want to beatbox on blocks. I just opened my mouth and that's what came out when I did park cars. People want to know if we park cars. I was like, hell yeah, we park cars.
Yes.
And then it's like, go to the book now, go.
Goodness,
So
yes, I'm really glad that you named that, because the amount of journals and notebooks I have with one-liners, a word that really stood out to me, maybe several stanzas that are completely unfinished that I felt like I've abandoned, they have life.
No, they do.
Maybe not now, but they will have life.
They do. They absolutely can have. I just talked to somebody who lost her book bag that had all her notebooks with poetry in it. So she heartbroken, because it's not the same as losing the jump drive and you can go on your cloud and pull it back down.
Right.
And that's kind of the sentiment that I shared with her is, I've been there. Mine was on a jump drive, and that jump drive, I stuck it in the laptop and it was like, would you like to format it? No, it has hundreds of poems on it. What do you mean?
And then the heart sinks to the toes.
And then the tears.
Yes.
And then the tears.
Oh.
But I talked to her because I had been there and I understood that process. But just telling her, the thing about it is, whatever those poems had in them, sometimes our words are baggage and we have to let them go. And that's very hard for writers. It's hard to let go of lines. It's hard to let go of stanzas. When somebody send you something back and say this is too long, it's like, well, there's nothing to cut out.
Yeah, like
A, B, is this enough?
That editing process
it's hard
stressful,
because we marry ourselves to what we've spoken, to what we've written. But the thing is, if it needs to be said again, and if it needs to be spoken out loud, well, you're the writer.
Yeah.
It's going to return to you.
Because it was already in you.
It was already in you, and it's going to come back, because you haven't lost your ability to write. Right. What you lost was poems that you've already written. So if you wrote a poem about how much you miss your mom, you're gonna miss your mom with that notebook, with that book bag or without it. That's right. 6 months later, after you've grieved your notebook loss, you might find yourself able to write it again and write it in a way now that makes you feel like, oh, I got to share this. Oh, this is the way I should have wrote it. This is what I was trying to say the first. Actually, as a matter of fact, that stuff wasn't that good.
It's exactly.
Whoa.
And it's so interesting to see how the muse works. And when she speaks, you've got to listen.
You got to listen.
You may not always have that notebook. I'm big on audio notes. Like I probably have completely messed up all of my files just because I have no storage, and I just clear things out because I need to record and record for that very reason, which is probably something I need to work on. But I'm really glad that you named that, and we're able to share your writing process with people, because it's messy, it's clunky.
It is. It's not this. The colors that are produced are not what it starts off as. It's just
Put that on a shirt.
Mess.
Yes.
It's like a melted wax pool of crayons, and you're just like, what?
Is there a poem in there? Like, where is the?
And then another thing that I really did heavily on this Walker poem, Madam Walker poem, was, and you said something that made me think of this. Words that stuck out to me just as I was living everyday life, I wrote them down to be used, or potentially to be used. So words I wrote down, and they're in notebooks, they're in my phone, they're on the, envelopes in my car.
Yes.
And it's like marvelous, opulent. I actually used opulent. I think I, of course, put grounds.
Yes.
And there were a few other words that I wrote in different places, like, I don't have a line for this. I don't have anything to say with this as of right now. But what I know is that word right there suits who I'm about to talk about.
Yeah, and it's got to be in there.
It's got to be in there.
Oh my goodness. There were so many lines from this poem. I mean, I've got to give you all the flowers. There are just so many lines in this poem where I found myself rereading them and thinking to myself, where in the heck was JY in this moment when this line was conceived? Because they're so powerful and emotional, and I have to hammer down on this fact that you've captured Madam's essence and her humanity in a way that is so necessary, because again, everybody sees the shiny penny, the glitz and the glamour, and how prevalent she was in the Black community. I think you painted a picture of who she might have been behind closed doors, which is really, really important. And this one line really stood out to me. You wrote, born in 1867 on the same southern plantation that dethroned her next of kin, the first free daughter of former slaves, delivered like the gift before Christmas. I mean, my goodness. My word. It's a powerfully cathartic poem, and not only did I find myself moved by every word, but I could hear you saying it in my head. But I'm real interested in who this poem was written for. From a reader's perspective, who would be the ideal person to get the information you poured into that poem?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, that's the one you should have sent me ahead of time. Whoa. Who would be, okay, so when I was writing this, I wrote this similar to the way I wrote, I have a book, magazine, journal. We'll call it a journal. It's in magazine form, but it's a journal. It's about Black well-being, and it uses poetry and writing prompts to help foster a regular routine, a regular well-being routine for anybody, but it targets Black people specifically. It uses quotes from different Black people. The prompts and activities are kind of based on our culture throughout the entire book. There's a point where you have to create a player's ball for a week, and then the writing part uses the first two lines from out of the actual song by Outkast to
could you
start.
please drop this link in my text messages?
It's for sale.
Yes.
But I'll make sure you get one.
Thank you, friend.
But when I wrote it, so this was a project for my master's degree. So this was my final capstone project. And what I wanted to do was create something that would be able to be utilized after I got out of school, not just something to get me graduated, something that could still be thriving. And so I came up with this book idea, this journal idea, but I thought about, it's a lot of people out here that do not write, that do not identify as writers and who will be the first to raise their hand to say, I can't write a thing. And so when I created this book, I tried to write it from the standpoint of a non-writer.
Oh, wow.
So that a non-writer, because a writer is going to get in here and have a field day. But a non-writer, I need them to feel comfortable with what they're reading enough, because you're not turning it into anybody. This is your stuff.
Just for you.
But I need you to feel comfortable enough to feel like you can do it. I need you to feel like when you get to this part that says write a poem about blah, 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 that I've given you the tools and the techniques beforehand to make this as easy for you as it possibly can. So every time there's a part that asks for them to write a poem, there's actually a preceding activity that gets them the dialogue, the words, the descriptions, the adjectives. And they don't know it because it's before the writing assignment. But when you get to that writing assignment, it reverts you back to, go back to what you said about on page 3, use that to create a poem about X, Y, Z. So I say that to say it's that same mindset that I wrote this poem from. Obviously, it's not about writers versus non-writers, but kind of the middle space of people who are unfamiliar and people who are familiar. And in that middle is a space of people that I think those were my targets.
Yeah.
Because if you're unfamiliar, this is not going to give you enough. It might spark your curiosity. That's my hope, that's my plan, that's my goal.
Yeah.
But if you're unfamiliar with her, this is not going to give you her full history to make you walk away and be like, I know everything I need to know about Madam Walker.
Yeah.
Like I said, ideally, it's going to make you be like, I need to know more. Where's the book? Where's my library card? Where are the documentaries?
Time to pull out the Googler.
Right. If you do already know about, if you are already familiar with it, then you're going to see gemstones in here that you're familiar with already, and potentially, depending on how much you know about her, you're going to, in between the lines, see stuff that is not going to be easy for the people who are not familiar with her to recognize. Kind of like that line. Born like the gift that was delivered before Christmas. She's born December 21st.
Yeah.
So.
And if her parents could see her, if her parents could witness the greatness that she became, knowing that they were enslaved.
Literally a gift. Literally gifted.
Yeah.
So you being familiar with her legacy and her history, that stands out because you know this information already. Me being unfamiliar, I might be like, well, that's a cool line, but I like the next one. So I'm targeting that middle space of people who kind of maybe know a little, but don't know enough. Maybe never heard of her, but have curiosities. Like, so who is the lady with the big building on the corner of Indiana Avenue? Because the reality is, they exist.
That's right.
And we cannot reasonably pretend that everybody knows everything about everybody that they should know.
That's true.
Because we're not even passing the information appropriately to our kin and to our younger and to our youth. And our youth are getting a little bit further removed from our historical figures. So I'm targeting that space of people who have enough curiosity, enough knowledge to be able to read and or listen to this and feel like, more please.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what comes to mind to me is more please. And not necessarily more please in terms of more from Januarie York.
Sure.
More please, how can I find out what's after this poem? How can I find out what was left out of this poem? How can I, as somebody who's familiar with everything that's in this poem, how can I take this poem or anything else and use it as a teaching tool? How can I bring other youth, other grown adults who are not familiar with this woman's legacy? Right here in our city, there are people that come to the theater that aren't even familiar with Madam Walker.
Every day.
So it's that space that I existed in when writing this poem. It's just trying not to leave anybody out, but trying to make sure that the people whose eyes gravitate towards it, whether it's an excerpt or the whole thing, or they're listening to it or whatever, that they feel just pulled in to her legacy in a way that I need more, or I really need to be sharing more about this woman. You're right. It has been 157 years since she was born, and we're still talking about her.
Still talking about her. I think that's what is so special to me about the Bicentennial Legends mural program. This project is bringing forth, I know this is the second iteration, but it's bringing forth these hidden gems, to your point, that nobody would have known unless they were given an assignment. And to see that history unfold visually with these stunning pieces of art, and then to have it summarized with the poem, it's special and important, and I'm really excited to see the trajectory of this project. But I'm so grateful that you are the commissioned poet to tell Madam's story. Madam made it a very deep point that anybody who leads this institution, anybody who is in a place of power in this institution, has to, in some capacity, embody feminist ideals, but more specifically be a woman. And I think that with this particular poem and the way you wrote it, Madam would be so proud.
Thank you.
She would be so proud.
That means a lot.
It's just so evident. I mean, the way you command a space, and we know that the performance is going to be beautiful, but then to see it live on paper, because as poets, we always want to give a good performance if we're into that, if we do slam poetry, if we're on stages. But having somebody be deeply connected to what's just on page without ever hearing your voice. I've had the luxury of hearing your voice, so I hear it in your voice. But to know that it stands on its own is really, really, really important to me.
Me too.
And you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. That was definitely a really big deal to me, that even though I knew I would be performing it, the end goal was to put some of it with the mural. So I would not be there standing by the mural every day for the rest of however long to perform this for all who may pass it. So it's going to be read. And so I, from the get-go, knew those two things. I knew I had to use grounds, and I knew that I had to create poetry. And that's why I always tell people I'm a writer, and then I do poetry. Because poetry is my chosen space, but I write. That's higher than what type of writer I am. I am a writer, and I say that because being a writer, even though I perform, I am a performer, and most people know me because I'm a performer. And
do a good job of it.
Thank you. I try. But even though that's like my method of getting my words to people, the writer in me always wants her words on paper to hold the same power and weight, which is why with the Major Taylor exhibit, I was really glad to see that they had the poem out, laminated, so you can pick it up and read it and walk through the exhibit with it if you want, because it's so important that these words on the paper are no different than the words that I speak if I'm speaking the same words.
That's right.
So I want them to have that same weight. I want the literary version. That's why it's written the way that it looks. Like I'm really writing poetry. When I write spoken word, so to speak, it's just straight down the page.
Yeah.
I mean, the lines may go, this next line may be 3 lines long, but when I am trying to get in a literary space where I know people may actually see this without my presence to say anything about it, it's just them, their eyes, and the voice that they have in their head. I need you, so this line need to go all the way over here so that you know that it's going, you need to pause for a minute.
Yes.
And let that one up there sink in. Like,
Mic drop. Oh my goodness.
so that's why it looks the way that it does on page. It's just me trying to convey that that silent voice, but through literary speak, so to speak.
And you do just a phenomenal job with that, to see how I'm forced to pause when one line goes in standard stanza format and I have to physically move my eyes to another space where I see this beautiful lump of words, and that tells a completely different story that without that pause visually, they of course can be translated in person when you see the performance, but visually it really just spoon feeds you this information in the way that I think you wanted it to be spoon fed. So you again, phenomenal job with that. Earlier, you had mentioned about how when you were young, you know, you were tasked with doing a project on Madam C.J. Walker and learning about her life. And as somebody who's a nonprofit arts administrator, we get calls all the time. Oh, well, my daughter, she's in 3rd grade and she's got this class report that she has to do, and we just want to give her a tour. And, you know, I do the thing, I give her a tour, and it's fun, and it's beautiful to see their eyes light up. But it's also important to recognize that we do live in an Afrofuturist present, a present where we can actualize the dreams of our ancestors, a present where we can pave paths of liberation for generations to come. And with critical race theory being weaponized and books being banned and actively burned, could you tell us your thoughts on the importance of preserving the whole of history, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Woo. Yeah, so it's funny, I was having a conversation with a dear friend not too long ago about, I think we were talking about U.S. history class and government class back in high school. Those were my straight F classes. Those were my straight F classes, hands down. The only time I got good grades in U.S. history was when that one semester when somebody was able to sneak all the quizzes and tests from the teacher's desk. We did that for months.
I know that's right.
Passed them out. And
you get an A, you get an A.
I mean, we couldn't have been more stupid. We all had straight A's in the class, like a couple weeks in a row, and he was like,
what's going on?
Why everybody got A's? And Miss Smith, why do you have an A? But I'm saying this because I got F's in history, I got F's in government. I don't know what could have been salvaged with government. It flew right over my head. But history, I could not make myself retain the information.
Yeah.
And you know you're trying to because you got a test.
Right.
And you have to get the credit. I graduated by the thinnest skin, just based on my government class.
Yeah.
My teacher was nice and gave me a D. He could have given me an F, but he called me to the desk and was like, so listen, you tried.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna pass you so you can get your credit and get on up out of my face, because you ain't tried none of the rest of the year.
Those are often the best teachers. I feel like we learned the most from those.
Seriously, like, thank you, sir, because my mom was not getting ready to be happy if you gave me an F. I didn't get this credit, and I'm a senior. But it was like that for every history class that I had. And the problem was not, I do not have the ability to learn. Before I tell you the problem, which is probably almost obvious, we'll go to English class. I got F's in English sophomore year. junior year. Half of junior, first semester junior year. I got D's and F's in English because they were having us read Grapes of Wrath, you know the books.
Yep.
And I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't read any of it. And so when we had tests, I would just put my name at the top and just look around at everybody. I don't know any of I don't know these names. I don't even understand this question. It looks like jargon to me. What is this? Because I have not opened my eyes up to this book. There's nothing about it that draws me in.
Yeah.
Same problem that I had with U.S. history, I had with English class. Junior year, second semester, we were able to select our own book to read. And our teacher had 4 or 5 different books we could read, maybe 3 or 4 different books we could read, and we could choose our own book. One book was by a black person.
Stop.
Zora Neale Hurston. Their Eyes Were Watching God.
That's it. That's it right there. Oh.
That's it right there.
Oh.
I chose the book.
Of course.
Now, I have not read any of my books beforehand. Now, anytime we was talking about just like writing stuff, that stuff, A's. But really, English in my day was based heavily on these books they having you read that you have no idea why am I even reading Uncle Tom's Cabin? Why?
It's like you can't see yourself in these books.
I don't see anything about me. I don't, not me, not my people, not nothing. Like, it's like I don't exist. Why would I read this? And it's the same with history. There's nothing in here about our full truth. Why would I continue to read about all these tea parties and all this happened and you bombed this and you found this and you discovered? Where am I at in here that's not a small quip about slavery? And it ain't even the full scope. It ain't even the truth. I am not so young that I cannot handle the truth. And truthfully speaking, depending on what kind of family you come from as a black person, I already got the truth. So now I'm actually in here kind of upset with you. Because I think Malcolm X came out in 1991 or 92. So I was 12 or 13 when that came out. And I was Team Malcolm X from henceforward. So by the time I got to high school, no. I've already read Alex Haley's book, Malcolm X. What are you talking about? I'm not reading this. I can't, my brain isn't even wrapping around the words enough to just retain enough to pass the quiz in the morning. Because
who the hell cares?
Who cares? I don't understand this. So, Zora Neale Hurston's book, we were supposed to read our books in chapters per week. I was done with Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God probably in 2 weeks. I moved through that book so quickly with the dialect and everything, which was the first couple pages, I was like, I don't know if I can read this. And I don't know what happened. I did not stop, and I did not want to stop. I did not feel like stopping. I just felt like, what is this? I don't know how to read this, but I found out enough to read the whole book. And I read it before I was supposed to be done with it.
2 weeks.
So I'm passing all my quizzes, I'm passing all my tests, and now I'm getting A's and B's in English. And the reason I'm getting A's and B's in English is not because somebody tutored me and now I'm smart. It's because somebody gave me something that I related to. Somebody gave me a piece of my history. Somebody gave me a piece of my people and said, you get to, this is just as worthy and as valuable as all this other stuff we're talking about. So if this is what you want to read, by all means, read it. I got a test for you the next morning. So when I think about critical race theory, when I think about our history and the preservation of it, I think about being that child who was making D's and F's in history and English classes. My mom used to be mad. How do you get an F in English? Because I need something they're not giving me. And our history is so rich and so colorful and so full, both on the traumatic and the joyful side. That it is a travesty to not teach it, not just to us. Everybody should know about it. It should not be something that we shy away from, because what it does is it creates students who don't want to participate in it and who refuse. And in this society now, this I can never say that word. And this society of technology and this kind of the attitude that the youth have in 2022 going into 2023, they are not with it, okay? They're not with you getting ready to not teach them very important basic information. This is basic information. How was this country built? How? From the start to current, how did we get here? And when I say we, I mean all of us. And this is important. Who are our artists? Who are our writers? That's why it's our job. And that's why I take this so seriously. And I think I put that, when I applied for this, I think I put that on there too. Like, I feel like as I've discovered myself as a writer and performer, part of my job, if not the whole job, is preserving history. And it is making sure that whatever I put my pen to when it's in terms of writing about something or somebody, that it creates an air of infinity. This history lives. It exists. This happened. This person was alive. This person created.
Had a full life.
Had a full life, was a whole human being. On these streets. When you go, if you go to the African American Museum in DC. You know, they have Emmett Till's casket there. Me and my friend were talking about this recently too. It's all a story until it's not. Until you're actually faced with it. It's all a story. Not a story in terms of lie. It's all a story. It's all something that we've heard, that we've read about, that somebody told us about. It's, man, that's messed up. I can't believe they did that. That hurts. I don't like that. It's messed up. It's wrong. But it's a story. But when you go into the museum and you're now standing in front of a casket that is worn, warped, that you know had this young boy's body inside of it.
It makes it so much more real.
You've seen that casket. You've seen the body that was in that casket. You saw what the body looked like. It takes it from being a story. And with it being a story, there's always this underlying unspoken, maybe it didn't happen that way. And that's not something any of us consciously think or think about. Because we believe what we believe. You said this happened, it looks like it happened to me. It's not a lack of belief. It is the story of it makes it kind of like TV. When somebody yelled cut after this was over, I can get up and walk away now and go watch Friends, go watch Martin. But when you walk into the Smithsonian and you stand in front of the casket, it's no longer a story. It's actually, this happened. This happened. There was a baby in here. And he was in here by this way and by these hands and for this reason. This is no longer a story. This is history. And this is my history. So that's the same kind of influence and power that I think I walk into my artistry and my writings with, is trying to make every poem, this is going to sound morbid, but just for sake of what we've been talking about,
we're all artists here.
Trying to make every poem that casket.
Wow.
Because it's not a story for you to now disconnect from. When I walked out of that room, mind you, I went backwards. Nobody told me to go up first. Nobody told me to go down, then go up.
I'm dead.
So, or is it whichever way? Whatever way you're supposed to go, so that you don't end on slavery, I went the other way. So I ended on slavery and Emmett Till. So when I walk out, I don't walk out with story, cut. Maybe that didn't happen. I don't walk out with any of that. I walk out with history. The same way that I walked out with the history, all the rest of the history in there. From the slave ships, from the information on the walls, the names, the numbers, to the hip hop room that had tapes with salt and pepper on them. Like, I walk out with history. I walk out, this actually happen? That's Salt and Pepper's real Pusha jacket. She really had that on.
Yes.
I've seen it in a video plenty tons of times, but now it's standing in front of me. This was on this woman's body. I used to sing this song and do that dance.
Live and in person.
It brings life to the subject rather than folklore. And so I think that's what the importance is making sure that we keep our history, past, present, and future, in a casket. In that casket. In our face.
Let it be real.
Let it be real. Let it be presented to us in a way that is not, I closed the book and that went away. It's, I heard it, I read it, I saw it, and now it's with me. And if we don't give our kids and our adults the opportunity to experience history, to learn it, to know about it, to see what they're shaping, to see what legacies they walk behind, that they come up behind,